Hello and welcome to Batflips and Nerds, the baseball podcast with a British twist. I am Darius Austin and we are delighted today to be bringing you the Great Britain World Baseball Classic preview, the podcast you've all been waiting for. The tournament starts extremely soon and we didn't want to let that go away without the opportunity to preview the full GB roster in detail. Joining me to do so, the excellently named Rob Jazz Navera, as he's put on his little caption here. Rob, how are you doing?
Jazzed.
You're
They're playing
jazzed.
today. I'm loving it. It's great. I'm all about it.
We are recording as the Brewers are about to play the GB team right now. And also joining me is going to be our man on the ground for the next couple of weeks. It is, of course, Russell Eassom. Russell, how's it going?
Yeah, doing good. Just pretty much finished packing most of my stuff. We'll record this, then pack the laptop, and we'll head down to Heathrow at 6 o'clock in the morning to get my flight out to Houston. It's gonna be a fun couple of weeks.
Yeah, I do
expect
remember a couple of times ago you flew out that way and you triggered a global pandemic. So if you could lay off that this time, that would be really appreciated.
Yeah, we haven't quite had the months of warning that we had the last time around that something is spreading around the world.
Pandemic.
So, yeah, still pandemic or something else maybe that's happened in the last few weeks.
Topical.
On that cheery World War III inducing note, let's talk about some baseball. I suppose before we talk about what you're going to do, Russ, and I think we should, because we'll obviously have a lot more coverage around that, and we'll be able to let the listeners know a bit about where you'll be and what you'll be up to. But I think we should talk about the team, and maybe we should talk about what seem to be some potential late changes first. So I think a lot of the listeners will probably have seen the originally announced roster, but are there rumblings that we might have to make a couple of, probably not surprisingly so, but a couple of late changes to the roster?
Yep. This has been confirmed by our sources within Team GB as well, but on the WBC roster, a couple of pitchers have been scratched and one replacement has been confirmed, with a second one being TBD. But Antonio Knowles and Michael Peterson, which is a shame for myself, British Gas himself, will no longer be competing for Team GB. And Dylan Covey has been added into the roster as of right now. All of the teams have like an extended pitching pool, which they basically, I think, gave it 5 to 10 players, which they were basically allowed to kind of pull players from during this kind of, as the tournament goes on, or even on pre-tournament right now. So that's what's happened. We don't know the exact reasons why yet. It's pure speculation, but both of them are fringe roster players, especially for Peterson with the Marlins. Not certain if Knowles would be directly making the Dodgers roster at the start of the season, but both of them could be probably potentially prioritizing getting roster spots, which in most regards you don't blame them, because there's a $700,000 difference between being a AAA player and being an MLB player.
Yeah, it's a difficult time of the season for those players who are trying really hard to win that job, isn't it? I think, these couple of weeks are probably the most crucial couple of weeks for spring training if you're that player who's not necessarily going to make the team. To make your case, this is crunch time. So as much as it would be great to see those guys on the roster, I understand why they're not making it over.
Yeah, but obviously with Covey as a replacement, it is a player with major league experience, so that's great. Someone who's competed in international baseball with Team US previously in a Premier 12, so they do have experience and a good head just to bring in as well. I think will help with this squad. But it does kind of put Team GB in a position of maybe having not a full plethora of lefties from the pen, but we'll have to see how that goes as the tournament progresses.
We certainly will. I will say we are recording right now as GB are about to play the Brewers. I think we've just started the game. I think Nate just led off for GB. So we've got an actual lineup, and I guess I'll ask both of you, are these the names you expected to see, Rob? You've got some familiarity with the GB team from the past. Do you know these guys? You heard of them?
I know some of these guys. Yeah, of course. There's some names in here that you remember from days of. And I don't follow the team nearly as much as probably I should. However, of course, I know some of these names. I cannot now find it, which is really frustrating because
I can read out the.
I'm vamping. It's fine. I'll get there. No, look. There are guys in this team we do know. Like I've called myself Rob Jazz on the thing. That's the big name, obviously, but he's not one of the heroes from last time who pushed over that Colombian team. So yeah, there's names here, and yeah, the pitching perhaps is a little lighter than we expected, and maybe we're missing some of the star names that we thought we might get. There was some, some Chapmans and some, there's some other little bits around the edges, but we've got the Harry Fords, we got our talisman right there, and we're not going to win this thing by being the most talented, baseball team. There's sort of a gritty element here, which is, we're going there to win a game, and yeah, we got a decent chance, So yeah, I'm happy with it. I know some of these guys. Ask me 3-4 years ago, probably not, So it's building, it's getting bigger, it's getting better. So yeah, I do know some of these guys, not as much as you guys, but I would put myself in probably the more even normal baseball public here. In the profile is raising, and that's what we need. It's what we want. So long way it continue.
And Russ, you made some lineup predictions a little while back. How does this match up with what you were expecting from this roster? Do you think this is what they're going to use going into the first game of the tournament itself?
Yeah, it'll be interesting. Last time around, the lineup when they faced the Brewers the first time around had 7 out of the 9 players who ended up starting game 1. So it is DBR under a new helmship with Brad Marcelino instead of Drew Spencer, but I imagine they're working from a similar playbook as before. So this, I imagine, is going to be pretty close. Some positions may be different. Some defensive alignments might change and the order might change. But yeah, we'll kind of see how that works out. But yeah, the lineup, we've got Eaton, Chisholm, Ford, Murray, Robinson, Johnson, Trace Thompson, Fox, and Lewis Jr., basically in that order. From the prospective lineup that I had, that I put out a couple of weeks ago, the main difference is with Lucius Fox and with Lewis Jr. in for Matt Koperniak, who I had in, and I also had Nick Ward in. That stuff really comes down to who's going to play shortstop for Team GB. Really, Fox is the only one that's played at the highest level and is still currently playing in that position. We know Jazz has history in that position, but we don't know. He's currently playing second base in this game for Team GB, and we don't quite exactly know what strings have been attached to kind of some of these players joining. So Team GB's general approach has been put the best 9 hitters in a lineup, and the defense will sort itself out. To Gav's heart rate, in the last tournament might have suggested that sorting it out was an over positive. There were definitely a few throws to first base when poor Nick Ward was there as a shorter fellow, basically trying to deal with that. Didn't get the best of throws, and there was a few errors in that infield. But we'll see kind of how that progresses through this tournament. But no, it's a lineup. It's a lineup that has more players in affiliate baseball than they did last time around. And as Rob said, that's because we're basically seeing this team be bigger profile. And as I talk right now, they've just scored their first run against the Brewers. So,
Take that, Mizorowski.
Yeah, against Jacob Mizorowski. So already going better than maybe some of their preseason games last time around. So, yeah. To be one of the things that highly amused me there was BJ Murray singling to Agil Badu, who was somebody who was rumored as having eligibility to play for Team GB. So maybe there'll be some discussions going on in between with a few of those guys. We'll get to the names in a second, but I think as Rob kind of went through, there was a lot of maybe this person can play a lot, especially with players with Caribbean heritage. The WBC rules effectively is like, do you have the chance to get a passport, which is a kind of effectively with the way passporting works with the Commonwealth countries, which is effectively is like most of them is like, could your grandparent get a British passport, which means that your parent could get one and then means that you could get one. Yeah, I think some of those rules have been tightened. There's around now because we have the Olympics coming up and those things get a little bit more stringent and more around of like getting closer to the point of just actually need to have the passport. But yeah, this is a strong lineup. And yes, it's the best team that GB's ever put out there. And I think hopefully that'll just continue over the next few years.
Yeah, it's definitely a lineup full of names that you may well have heard of. I think there's quite a lot of representation, either guys who've played in the majors or guys that we think may well play in the majors at some point in the relatively near future. I think that's exciting. I don't know if there's anyone, Rob. You can say Jazz if you want to, but is there somebody in this lineup that you're particularly looking forward to seeing play for GB? Is it the obvious names, or is there somebody that maybe you've seen glimpses of here and there, the Nate Eatons of the world that you might have a little exposure to, but you think might be a bit of a spark plug for the team?
Actually, it's Trace Thompson for me. Like he's got a bit of a his career's on a bit of a teeter there, and he has something to show off. And he had a couple of moments looking maybe a little bit grumpy playing for GB last time round. Like he smiled in his picture in his uniform this year, which was a nice improvement on what we had last time. So you know what, he's taken a second bite of the cherry, and he's got something to prove. And I reckon this time, maybe he's actually going to think this actually means something, because this is a real big chance for me to actually put myself out there and be seen a little bit. If he can be the Harry Ford, if he can be the big moment man, then maybe this does something for his career, which it's not at the best point right now. So Trace Thompson is one I'd like to look out for.
Yeah, I think Trace was a key player in the last time around. Like his home run against the US had me and Gav jumping for joy in the alternate press box, looking a little bit daft, wearing our hearts on our sleeves there. But I think Rob is right that it will be really interesting to see how he progresses. Like he is not potentially like the standout player in that squad as he was kind of like last time around. The thing that I notice most from being like on the ground at these games and watching these guys play BP is like how well like they actually like hit BP. Like the difference between the independent guys, the guys in the minors, the guys with like major league experience, and then going watching Team USA hit BP, because that was the first game last time around, and watching the quality of BP is just higher. Like more balls are going in over the fence or getting close to the fence just on every single swing. And then take it to the extreme. Watching Shohei Ohtani hit BP in Miami was just ridiculous. He was basically putting them on the second deck and putting them into the scoreboard like every single swing. So you're like, it's a really simplistic guide, but like you could clearly see that Trace Thompson was a level above quite a lot of people around him last time around. This time, I think he might have more broader support. So for me, obviously seeing Jazz back is amazing. It's been effectively 10 years since he wore that jersey in the qualifier that was in late 2016. So that's kind of like amazing to come back around again. Otherwise, you just got like people that I was lucky enough to talk with in person kind of last time around, which would be just great to kind of like meet up again and just kind of see these guys. Like Tyler Bizza was a really kind of like interesting person to speak with, and Vance Worley like last time around. Those were guys with just great baseball experience and honestly just interesting people to have conversations with baseball around. So getting a chance to see those guys again, I would have said Michael Peterson if he'd been in the squad, just because he's someone that I've met on multiple occasions, as he was one of the few players I met in the forlorn attempt for the 2020 tournament before everything was ruined by COVID.
It.
Yeah, I think everybody, before I forget, before Gav tells me off, everybody should definitely go to the website. Gav's got some great content on there, including a player-by-player profile.
Oh man!
So if you want
He
more detail on any of these guys,
he bled over that.
Gav has done incredible work and profiled each member of this roster. So if you want to get any more details, he's got it all. He's got videos in there. He's got little fun facts. It's the works. He's done a lot of work on it. So definitely go to the website, check it out. We'll obviously have lots more coming over the next few weeks as well on the WBC. Gav really loves this stuff, and we really appreciate his work. So do go and check it all out.
Yeah. It's genuinely the best place you can find, like the best summary of the team. You won't find it anywhere else on the internet like that. Like, it's, yes, I'm a homer for the website, but you cannot find writing about GB baseball like what Gav has done there. That it is top notch.
Yeah, I was half expecting when Rob was going to talk about the different players that like he put it. There's a couple of raised prospects in there, and I thought he would gone, especially with the name
Well,
Gary Gill Hill. I thought that would have been one that Rob.
I was going to go straight to Rob with that. Yeah, that's the next one. And what is your familiarity with Gary Gill Hill?
Kneel for Gil Hill. No, I have not seen Gil Hill play. I don't think he was a spring training invite last year, and if he was, I missed him wearing a number 86 on his back or something. So no, I've not seen him at all. But it's good to have the prospects in there. Yeah, it's good for them. It's good for them. Like this is. People might actually watch some of this, whereas the 8th inning of a spring training game against the White Sox ain't gonna happen. Not that they would be playing the White Sox, of course, because it's a different league, but that's neither here nor there.
Yeah, I will say that at BP we have Gil Hill 18th in the Rays system, which doesn't sound very high, but as you all know, Rob, the Rays have a lot of prospects. They usually have a pretty deep system. This year is no exception. So we see like a potential fourth starter, maybe mid-rotation guy if he hits his upside. So there's a chance we could be looking back in a few years and saying, hey, he was the best pitcher on this WBC team. I think that's within the realm of possibility. We may well see him in a 2-3 years time actually making up a significant role on a major league mound. So I'm excited to see him because I also have not seen him play, but it will be good to see. Russ, you've already sort of touched on a bit of the pitching, but how do you see this playing out over the course of the tournament? Who are we going to go to in the rotation? And do you have an idea of how that's going to map out across the group games and that?
Yeah, it's an interesting one basically to be like who are actually going to be like the guys that are the starters. Like there isn't a massively like standout like these is what you're going to expect. I think like Jack Seffings is probably going to do a reasonable amount. I think that Tyler Vizzer and Vance Worley will do that as well. But I think what you'll see from Team GB, maybe a bit more than some of the other teams, is an approach where it's basically every inning matters the most because they're effectively going to win as many games as possible. But with basically international baseball, you kind of lose a game and it really scuppers you, like no matter what it is. So they will be looking to utilize their best players as and when they can, like as much as possible. So you'll probably just see 2 or 3 innings of anybody max before kind of getting over to the next guy. A few of the other teams with their top pitchers, there are limitations in the WBC in the first few rounds of like 65 pitches is the maximum, and then it's like 80 pitches in the knockout rounds and like 90 pitches in the final, to just because we are in spring training, teams don't want their players going out and throwing 140 pitches in a shutout because the manager of Team GB or Netherlands or Nicaragua wants to win this game more than like deal with what's going to happen in the major leagues next season. So in some regards, it doesn't matter that you don't have the top arms because they can't be used too much. But I think we'll definitely see like a high turnover with Team GB being like, let's just match to the situation that we're in. Like, if we think we've got our best guy up there right now, cool, he'll continue for another inning. If we think we've got a better option for this inning, for the 3 players that we're going to face, let's go to that, basically kind of pull that through. And so when you have the variety that they do with having like the Beck brothers, with having Jack Anderson and a few of the others, we've already mentioned Gary Gill Hill, like we still have Donovan Benoit and Javes Fernandez who took part in like the previous tournament. So I do think that you have like, there are names, there aren't the rumored ones that we're talking about maybe in the past, like Tristan McKenzie and a few others that were potentially kind of MLB like quality starters, but they'll do a good enough job and they'll basically put themselves in a position to be competitive in most of those games.
Yeah, I think we saw last time that we had some experience with these types of tournaments, and there was some very sensible management of those games. Gave us not only that win, but a very, very close game as well. We could easily have won a second in that tournament. So be very interesting to see how that plays out this time. I suppose we should actually talk about what you're going to be doing, Russ, and also what the schedule looks like for GB. So I assume you will be making it to all these games. Can you take us through what you've got planned? And most importantly, you've already crossed Shohei off the list. Whose hand are you going to be trying to shake this time?
Yeah, that's the interesting one. Yeah, I fly out tomorrow morning as we're recording this, probably all the time by anybody who's actually listening to this, I will already be on a plane out to Houston. I'm there for all of the group games. So lucky enough to have the press coverage for all of the games. So I will basically be sat in Daikon Stadium or Minute Maid Park, whatever you want to call it, for about 10 hours each day, watching 2 games of baseball and all of the jazz that goes on before and after games. If it's anything like it was at Arizona in Arizona last year, there'll be some highly amusing moments because the teams have to basically wait for all the other people to get out of the changing rooms before they can then go into the changing rooms for their next game. So last year I was down waiting to go into the press room to hear some of like the managers speak, and just in the corridor chatting like they were mates, because they obviously were, with the likes of like Mike Trout and Mookie Betts, just having just like conversations, and you're just like it's probably wrong to me to get down on my knees and be like, we're not worthy, we're not worthy. But there are moments in my head where doing that. But yeah, we're lucky enough to coverage for this, so I will be out there. We'll basically be speaking, so hopefully getting some time with some of the Team GB on the March 5th to kind of give us a little bit of a preview before the tournament actually gets underway, and then we'll be providing effectively, hopefully, pre-game and post-game coverage from the players, the coaches, and anything that happens here for that whole entire journey. And then once we've gone through the group stages and the quarterfinals that are in Houston, off to Miami for another few days to watch the semifinals and final in Miami. And if those are anything like the ones that I saw in Miami last year, I probably watched 2 or 3 of the best sporting events I've ever seen live. The USA Venezuela game was frankly ridiculous, and then the ending moment of the last WBC, which was scripted to high end, which I think the only way it can switch around this time is if you have Shohei Ohtani hitting something off like Paul Skeens. I think that's the only way that you can probably match that end moment. But yeah, it's going to be an amazing 2.5 weeks of effectively just watching baseball.
So have you set yourself any goals for any special handshakes this time? I've got some suggestions, some targets for you.
If we've got the targets, then that's something we can work through.
Okay. I got 3 targets for 3 games.
Okay. I'll talk you through some of the interesting people that I met last time around. Obviously, Adam Jones was a good one that I met and had a really nice chat with last time around. Amusingly, I had a 5-minute conversation with Tony Clark last time around, but maybe that we won't get a chance to reprieve that one.
Are you saying you have an inappropriate relationship with Tony Clark, Russ?
Sister-in-law.
Well, I'll tell you what, boys, Tony Clark makes me feel small, so...
That's what she said.
Well, we've got the explicit tag on this one now.
No, I think the last time I was definitely almost as starstruck with the press as I was with the players, meeting like John Morosi and Ken Rosenthal and Jeff Passan was a bit like, these are some of the other like superstars. But on the player side, I think if we're going for the big ones, we've got to be like, we've got to either go like Aaron Judge or maybe somebody like Fernando Tatis or Acuna if they make it to those semifinals, where I can actually.
So you're gonna go for an even bigger man.
Yeah,
like the biggest man. Like you thought the guy was big last year. Like this year, the biggest man you can find.
Yeah, I think it's got to do that. I've got to like feel small in the conversations and see if I can work my way through last time. Yeah, the handshake with Ohtani was one of the funniest things in the last time around, just in a huddled mass of all of the press watching him take like his BP and everybody just being in awe. And then these 2 or 3 people standing beside me, like obviously know him, call him across, and he starts shaking hands with people and just continues to kind of like offer his hand to me because I'm stood next to these people, and I'm like, oh, yes, thank you.
Yes, I'm a Japanese reporter. Hello, yes.
So yeah,
well,
I think
this time This time, I think we need to set you some target. Like, I don't know who we should get from Brazil because they haven't got Jan Gomes. Does he still play there? Like, that's the most famous Brazilian player I know. But I think let's go for Randy. You got to get a picture of Randy, surely. A picture, even if it's just a close background picture, you got to get some Randy action. Again, I'll maybe rephrase that. So Randy Rosarena is what? Got to get on the Pasquatch. Got to get on the Pasquatch for Team Italy. Got to get something out of there. You got to go with some Pasquatch, and then for the USA, which will be the hardest one, just you got to shake any Cy Young hand, any hand that's won a Cy Young. Just got to touch that hand. You've got to get a Cy Young hand in there.
Okay, yeah,
There's a few.
Yeah, pitchers will be a bit more difficult because they do not hang around the bullpen area.
Tackle Clayton Kershaw, fine.
I say Kershaw is notoriously not at all bothered when you interrupt his pre-game preparations. Like he doesn't put that.
Yes, get punched by Kershaw. That would be amazing. That would be the pinnacle.
It would be.
I'd love to see. Actually, I'm really interested to know if he's still just as serious, even though he's basically retired. If he still like approaches it exactly the same way, he's like, "Don't talk to me. I'm getting ready for the game."
Yeah, it will be highly amusing to see if any of those guys will offer themselves out. Most
I think
of the time they were.
Surely you can get Vinny on the pod. He seems like a personable chap. I reckon we can get him.
Yeah, I think so. Like I think the most thing I found most remarkable in the tournament last time around was just like the different numbers of press for like the different games. We're in USA's group last time around, so like anytime the USA were playing, the main press box was almost full, but like there was a little bit of spots that I could sit in. When basically Team USA wasn't playing, like you could go sit wherever I want in the press box and kind of effectively just find a front row seat and kind of just enjoy what was going on because it wasn't allocated seating. But also down on the field, like pre-game, it was like you had like a quarter of the people there when it wasn't a USA game, and then the madness of the number of Japanese like reporters once were watching the Japan games in Miami. It was there was so many people there. It was just unbelievable to kind of just to see those huddles and to see the conversations. But yeah, I'll do my best to work with that. I think if we can, I was trying to work in my head being like, so are there any Cleveland players that I could mentally like be like, you know what, I actually support you, David. But then the one that I would want to be Jose Ramirez isn't even playing for the Dominican because he feels that he's been slighted and was told that Manny Machado would play third base ahead of him. So
that feels a bit rough. Is that true? I mean, it's all alleged at this point, I'm sure, but yes, I've not heard that.
There are some cryptic messages that have been put out there on Instagram by Jose, effectively claiming that he's been slighted. I didn't say exactly why, but reading between the lines, that's what most people would think so.
Yeah, so I'll run through the actual schedule for the group if you're interested. You want to know when GB are playing? They will be playing on March the 6th at 6 p.m. That is the Mexico game. They are playing the USA and Tarek Skubal, of course, at 1 a.m. on March the 8th. That's technically March the 7th in the US, but obviously, it's quite late. Then they're coming straight back later that day in the UK and playing Italy at 6 o'clock. And then the next day they've got Brazil also at 6 p.m. I will also add that there are a number of watch parties around the UK. So a lot of the GB baseball clubs are getting involved in this. They're putting things on. So Manchester, Bristol, Exeter, Glasgow, Edinburgh, Cardiff, Newcastle, Guildford, West Midlands Baseball League, which, it's in Birmingham, Dundee, Bracknell, Preston, and of course, London. There are watch parties at all of these locations. So there's more information on the British Baseball website that Chris Knobloch's put out there for the specific venues for that. But there'll be lots of GB baseball clubs hosting those parties. So if you would like to go and watch with some fellow GB baseball fans and you're near any of those locations, then do pop along. I'm sure it will be a great time.
1,000,000 points to anyone who does Bracknell and Dundee in the same day.
Like during the GB game?
Yeah, like Phil Collins during Live Aid. Like you start at the beginning of one and then you get there for the end of the second one.
Yeah, what do you reckon? I'm going to look up Bracknell to Dundee now. How long do you think that would take?
There'll be the wrong kind of leaves on the track, so don't. Yeah.
Even if you had your own, if you have your own personal helicopter, like flying you from one venue to the other, I'm not certain you could do it in the time of one baseball game.
No, I don't think so.
Yeah.
It's telling
We have
me it's
extras,
6
do we?
hours to
We
get
do have
to
extras.
Dundee.
There are extras.
Yep, I'm seeing the 21 inning thriller against Brazil. That's when to try it.
I think it's going to be a challenge, Rob. It says 8 hours to drive up there. The London to Dundee
Russell
flight
already
is
posed helicopters.
being advertised as 1 hour and 50 minutes, which still seems a bit slow.
All right,
It is
well, if
quite a
anyone
long
does
way
it, you win a hat. I don't know. Have we got a hat we can give someone?
I think we probably have a hat. I
Yeah,
think
if
you
anyone
should be
manages that,
responsible.
if
I
I can
think
see a
you're
picture of someone in
responsible.
Bracknell and Dundee, same game, we will send them a hat.
Any hat. Rob will buy you any hat of your choice.
Probably just a flat cap.
If you can somehow make this 8-hour car journey in the space of 3 hours, we will definitely send you a hat.
It's
That's a
hat-worthy.
guarantee. Okay, well, I think we've covered off the GB preview. Russ, was there anything else you wanted to add about your schedule or the team in general?
Yeah, I think it's just like it's one of these ones where it's like I think what we're seeing, you'll hear all the time people talk about like Team GB about this, like it's not like, oh, these aren't British players, these aren't people who are like born and raised in the UK, and I just think that like it's always important to say that like this is what makes Britain Britain. I think this is what makes we're constantly like redefining what it means to be British. There are people who have reasons to be connected with this country, and every time that these GB teams have been pulled together in the last like 5 to 10 years, like the coaches, the whole system they make sure that everybody talks about the reason why they want to wear like that jersey and why they want to kind of like represent Great Britain. From hearing it last time around, talking to people like Anthony Seymour and talking to kind of Javis Young from their Bahamian backgrounds, kind of like really understanding why they want to kind of like to do that it's a great part of kind of like what actually this tournament and this team get to represent, because we know right now that we don't have a professional league in this country. This is something that like wouldn't be possible without the vagaries of the historical British Empire. But it is great to basically see that there are all these people that are wanting and willing to kind of like represent Great Britain and kind of be British.
Yeah, it's very cool to see all these people coming together, often from very diverse very different experiences getting into baseball as well. I think myriad paths. I think Gav covers this off quite well in his preview on the site about the different experiences some of these guys have had getting in from being the highly touted draftee or international signing to the guy who's had to toil in the minors or not even the minors, in the indies for years and years until being finally picked up on a sort of a very low cost deal from the Brewers or somebody to stick in their minor league system. There's a real range of routes into baseball, and it's really fun to see all these players come together from a range of countries and backgrounds. And I'm really excited. I think it's going to be a great tournament. I think the hype after last time is definitely gone up, and I'm excited not just to see GB, but some of these other really high class rosters that we talked about last time coming together. And I think it's going to be a real good fight at the top as well to see who comes out as champion this time.
Yeah, and I think although like we'll be potentially like realistic with like where we anticipate GB to finish in this tournament, like we do think that they are better than the Brazilian team, and they'll have a tough match against Italy, but that's kind of like that. The other two games are very difficult, and like if they were to get something out of them, it would be phenomenal and would drive like a massive growth like in this sport. Like anything that basically, if GB beats the USA in a baseball game, that makes like BBC Sport like front page sort of stuff. Like it is enough to basically be like the kind of like you remember the Norwegian football commentator, and he was just like, Margaret Thatcher,
Yeah.
Winston Churchill, your boys took one hell of a beating. That's when like when I write that up, that is exactly what like the first paragraph of that is going to be.
You're going to be Ronald Reagan,
George Washington, Donald Trump. Your boys took one hell of a beating.
Babe Ruth, notoriously overrated Babe Ruth, as we've often said on this podcast.
But the team is going out there to compete and to win all of their games. They're not going out there to be like, we just want to win one game and make sure we're qualified. Like, that qualification is now the minimum expectation. Like, to be set in this position where they can work the way that they have in the last 2 to 3 years to be in a good position to actually kind of be prepared for the next tournament. In a lot of reasons you'll see with the chat with Gary that we'll put on the end of this is that there's still the potential of a qualification for Olympic Games and funding around that out there, because in 2028 there will be baseball in the Olympics and there's only 6 teams in that tournament and one of them will be a European team. So qualification and how that goes makes a massive difference. And in this country, getting money into a sport, if it's an Olympic sport, it's a lot easier to get money.
Yeah, definitely a lot more riding on this than just how we do in the tournament. So I think it's going to be really every time we see the profile go up, don't we? I think so. Some of these other eyes against some of these really high profile teams playing the USA is a great opportunity, I think. And yes, Derek Scribble is quite good, but he's probably only going to throw like 40 pitches, right? So it's fine.
Well, maximum he can throw is 65. So
Yeah.
Get up there and start fouling them off, boys. And
Upside down rosters. This is the answer. Upside down lineups.
Like, it's generally like it's not that much of an unknown thing in international baseball, Rob. There have been definitely times when people have like messed with lineups to basically try and work counts. And
so it's not fully stupid then.
No, it's not. It's
hey, chalking that one up as a win.
Yeah.
So when are you getting on the plane to join Russ as the GB's official tactician? Is that happening now?
I can get your resume over to Gary if you want.
Send him all the research you did on Roy Utah, and he'll be really impressed with.
Yeah, he'll see that. I've got pictures of uniforms and everything.
But that's one thing we haven't discussed. Have we seen the new fresh tees that are wearing this year? That hopefully the tee will stay on the shirt.
I have seen them. Yeah, I've been looking at GB Baseball's Twitter feed. There's quite a lot of shots of all the guys wearing the uniforms actually.
Yeah,
so
they seem
I think
to
we could
manage to line all the letters up better than the Red Sox did in a very similar uniform. So that's one better than them.
These are Nike rather than Fanatics, aren't they?
Well, the Red Sox admitted that they were the ones that were responsible for what they told Fanatics to do, which you're then just like, wait, so you told them to make it like just poor quality? There's so much to be said about like these Fanatics jerseys and what we've got compared to what we used to get with Majestic. It is just a shame that like this is the quality that we have now compared to like what used to exist before.
Yes. Well, we are optimistic that no letters will fall off the GB uniforms. Yeah, if you are watching the video version, you can now see Rob holding up a picture of this on his iPad.
I'm going to win the baseball.
And hopefully this time around there'll actually be GB merch in the MLB store, in the store inside the Houston Stadium. Last time there wasn't because everything had to be so quickly rushed because they were a qualifier and basically didn't get the chance to use some of the logos that they wanted because they didn't have the right copyright rules to.
Well, Ian Dubois was clearly ironing on his own words, so this time, fingers crossed. So anyone who wants anything, get your orders in with Russell now.
I'm taking a suitcase that will definitely have some space in it. Don't know how much we'll fill it with things along the way, but definitely some baseball gear being brought back.
I will say the good news is that GB are currently no-hitting the Brewers. The bad news is that Brewers pitcher DL Hall is currently pitching for us, who will not be on our roster. The quirks of these exhibition games. So regrettably, DL, former top prospect DL Hall, is not going to be joining us for the actual tournament. But it's going well. It's a good sign. We've scored a run.
Yeah, I was watching it through, and it's one of those weird things where you're just like, so Harry Ford came out, and then he pinched hit for him back forward for himself. So what you can do in spring training or not even spring training game.
We'll send some rule suggestions to Manfred. Just do this in the regular season. He'll love that.
I just sometimes love the names that are in baseball where you're just like, Jesus made lines out to Jazz Chisholm Jr. It's just like,
You
mind
don't,
you
you
just
don't get
doesn't quite compute what's being said here.
you don't get this in any other sport. Okay, well, I think I'm gonna wrap us up there because this podcast is not done. Russ, you have spoken to Gary Anderson, haven't you? And you've got a separate chat for us, which you conducted a little while ago. So we will tag that onto the end of this podcast. But can you give us a quick preview of what you talked to Gary about to whet the appetite?
Yeah, a bit about Gary's background and why him as like the performance director really has kind of like helped GB move to the next level. He's worked with like in the FA and like Team Bobs and Team GB bobsleds like in the past to kind of like to pull that through. Bit of how this time around it's been different, what approaches they've kind of set up and what is their aim, how do we get an Olympic medal in baseball.
All very promising stuff. I look forward to hearing it along with the rest of you. Thank you both for joining us. I'm sure we will be back soon with more WBC content, as well as an idea, Rob, that you put out, I think, about 3 months ago now that we still haven't done. But we keep saying we're going to do, which is to recap the off-season in the order of the most boring moves. So, yeah, hopefully we'll get to that soon, along with what I expect to be a preview of Team GB's triumphant WBC run. So that's all to come, all to look forward to. Thank you for joining us, and over to Russell's interview with Gary Anderson.
We don't do links often.
Hello and welcome to Bad Flips and Nerds, the baseball podcast with a British twist. I am your host today, Russell Eassom. I'm not joined by any of my other crew, but that's because I have the amazing opportunity to interview someone who has a lot to do with the British national team. I'm delighted to be with Gary Anderson today. He is the Director of Performance or Head of Performance. I can never remember which one it actually is for Baseball Soccer UK and the BBF. A native of Watford, a long-time supporter of Watford FC. He's had the reputation for transforming, I would say, underdog programs into world-class organizations. What he did with the British bobsleigh team, getting a retrospective bronze medal back in 2014. We'll probably talk about that and some of his greater work with the FA as well. Since joining baseball in 2022, Anderson has been the focus behind Great Britain's historic ascent into the world rankings. Gary, thank you for joining us today. How are we doing?
I'm doing okay, thanks, Russell. And what an introduction. I think I've been parachuted into places because there's been problems and I've been asked to sort them out. But certainly with baseball, I've fallen in love with it. And normally, once I've got things going well, I usually move on to the next project. But it seems that I'm stuck with this one and it's fantastic.
Yeah, so I'm in reviewing kind of what you've done in the past and seeing how people talked about you when you've been on with the podcast with some of the other guys before in the past. We kind of see you as like this performance architect, but it's kind of like you've never like stuck to just one sport. You've won a FIFA Fair Play Award. I said the bronze medal with the bobsleigh team. Like, what's kind of like the universal truths of high performance that kind of like you brought into like this GB role that's kind of like the Gary Anderson view on kind of like high performance?
Yeah, I have a philosophy on performance is that whatever sport you go into, it's at the top level, it's not about teaching people the technical basics of that sport. It's about putting together a team around a team that can support that performance process. And my philosophy has always been is that, it's not my job to teach someone to hit a ball or to pitch a ball. It's to make sure that they turn up on time, that all the coaches have everything they need in order to execute that performance. And, it's almost like, I guess, conducting an orchestra, with having all those instruments, having all those talented musicians, but ensuring that they know when to play their instrument and at what beat. And that's what I enjoy doing. It's certainly, I've carved a career out of it. And, is something that I'm passionate about. I'm passionate about high performance sport, and I love winning.
Yeah. I find it very interesting, like looking through your career, you talked about the fact that like you've tried and failed to retire.
Yes.
Especially before taking this role. I guess the question is, what was the specifics of like the Great British Baseball puzzle that drew you back in from that sweet retired life?
I'm looking forward to that day that I do retire, but it's looking like it's going to be way beyond LA now. It's I I had retired up until this job came up, and I hadn't retired. I don't think I'll ever retire. I think that I'll always do some sort of work. I can't ever see myself sitting at home watching Homes Under the Hammer and enjoying my life in a comfy armchair. That's not me. I would always be involved in sport in some way. And as I'm getting older, that is more and more the administrative side of things. And I had retired I'd been working through the COVID period, working in professional rugby and professional football, and helping very successful teams navigate that very difficult time and the return to play. And I always describe it. I never experienced COVID like everybody else did, because I went to work every single day, because elite sport continued, albeit in a very strange way. But I still got in my car and drove to work every day, because it was my job to make sure that all these regulations were adhered to, and that elite athletes had the opportunity to train. So I was working through that, and trust me, Russell, at the end of that, I was ready to retire, because nobody knew how to do it. We didn't know what we were doing, whether we were doing it right or wrong, but it was a hard time. And at the end of that, I thought, you know what, that's it. And then the Tokyo Olympics got moved by a year, and I started doing some work for karate, for the international karate scene, and making sure that the high performance system within karate was fit for what's taking place in Tokyo post COVID. And this job came up with Baseball Softball UK, and I saw it and I thought nothing of it. I thought that's the last thing I want to be doing now. Is I want to be maybe doing a consultancy job somewhere rather than going back to be a performance director. I've done that for so many years. I didn't fancy doing it again. But then a very good friend of mine, who at the time was the head at the British Olympic Association, Mike Hay, pointed out to me that this job was going. And he said, it's right up your street. He said that two sports, baseball and softball, both are sort of underperforming and with huge potential, and with the Los Angeles Games on the horizon. He said it just fits you to go in there and put an Olympic system in place. And when I looked at it, Russell, it was uncanny. The situation was very, very similar to when I moved into bobsleigh. Very similar. Same characters, same issues. Two sports that weren't really talking to each other, but had very similar needs. In bobsleigh, it was bobsleigh and skeleton, two what are now very successful sports, as we are seeing in Milan Cortina at the moment, that didn't talk to each other, but had the same needed the same resource. And it was good work in that area, putting those two sports together. And I saw the same with baseball and softball. And I thought, you know what, I will, have a look at this. It was a funny story. I was interviewed for the role 6 times, 6 official interviews I went through. And I couldn't believe it. The amount of times I had to be interviewed for a role, which I didn't particularly want at the time anyway. But I went through it, and more I was learning about it, the more and more that I wanted it. And it was when I met with Drew Spencer that finally convinced me that, you know what, this is the sport I want to be involved in. And, after the interviews, I spent some time with Drew before I decided to take the role. And it was Drew that convinced me that this was for me.
Oh, that's amazing to hear. In your book, The Winner's Mindset, you talk about like performance planning. When you first arrived with this role, when you took it, was that the first like cultural pillar that you felt needed to be installed before like results could follow, or was there something else that you decided this is what I need to do first?
I think it was getting people to understand what could be achieved, what the potential of achievement was. I'm not sure many people in baseball knew about the Olympic Games, and not necessarily the Olympic Games, but the process of qualifying for Olympic Games and running a program and receiving funding to run a program. Rather than beg, borrow, stealing money from everywhere to ensure that a national team could go somewhere, and players putting hands in pockets. And but don't get me wrong, Russell, we're a long way from being able to fund everything, but we are a lot closer to what I recognise as a full-time professional program. And it was putting that in place and people understanding what could be achieved, and then identifying a appropriate performance pathway, highlighting competitions that we believed we could win, and then putting together a plan for that. And when Drew was in post, that was easy because Drew got it. Drew knew exactly what he wanted, and working alongside him with the age group teams were very good coaches. And Jonathan Crammon, who's gone on now to work in professional baseball and guide the under-23s to a gold medal. Having people like that in the program, it was quite easy to sell the performance concept which is my philosophy. And what I hope is when I leave baseball and softball, which I will do one day, it's the legacy I want to leave, is an understanding of what people can achieve if they really, really wanted to, what they can achieve. And I think that was the first pillar that had to go in place, is that, what, this can be us. And we have a saying, if not us, then why not GB? Why can't it be GB doing this?
Yeah, speaking to Drew and Liam and Jonathan all the time, the phrase they always say is like, "You can get there from here." I think is a big attitude that they've shown that to some people within the playing world in this country they didn't think was even like a possibility, and so that's like a great thing. So let's delve more into kind of like the GB. It may be too much to say, but Gary, you're part of the people who've put like the great in Great Britain. And when it comes to baseball, like recently, we've had a pretty large momentum shift from being a maybe team, a nearly team on the international scene, to now being a top 20 ranked program. We have talented players playing at the major league level. Like, has there been a system that you've introduced or was already kind of there that helped us kind of constantly punch a little bit above what would be traditionally regarded as like the powerhouses of baseball?
I think and thank you for saying that. And I am a small cog in a very big machine that does this, and I'm hoping that I contribute a little bit to that. I think it's ensuring that the head coach has what they need to do the job, and then supporting that head coach in making those decisions. Because, as you know, it's the head coach, in most people's eyes is never right. There's always, you go in the pub and you can pick a much better team than anybody. We all do it. I do it with my beloved Watford. I can pick the best Watford team ever. But do you know what? I'm never going to be wrong with that because my team is never going to be tested. All right. So I can pick that team and it's never going to be tested. When our head coach, Brad Marcelino, picks a team at the moment, he's going to be tested every single time that team takes the field. So I think what I would like to think that I do is put that, that arms around but fingers out philosophy with him, that I put my arms around him, support him with his selection decisions and what he wants to do, but I keep my fingers well out of the technical and tactical decisions.
Yeah. And we're now in a position where GB is, I think players are maybe coming to you guys instead of like having to like go find players. It feels like it's now in a much kind of like healthier position to finding that sort of talent. Yeah.
Yeah, we're much more visible. The program is much more visible on the world stage. For this World Baseball Classic, we didn't have to go knocking on players' doors this time round. Okay, they were ringing our bell. Whereas I remember for the qualifier in Regensburg with Drew, we were ringing people up asking, is it true that, you're eligible to represent Great Britain? This time round, we didn't have to do that. People know about Great Britain now, and they were coming to us to say that they have a British passport or or they are entitled to a British passport. So it was very, very different this time round. So I think it's attractive to play for Great Britain now. We were pre-qualified for the World Baseball Classic. People knew 3 years out we were going to be in this edition of the World Baseball Classic. So players had enough time to work out that they wanted to be in this event and contact us. So selections this time round was very, very different.
Yeah, and I guess you had to learn a different set of skills around kind of actually determining people's eligibility compared to how it was beforehand.
Yeah, this time round it's been tightened up as well. I think that's to do with the Olympics. The Olympic qualification points up for grabs, and so I think it's a lot tighter now. That for now there has to be a route for eligibility through the parental route. You can no longer go back beyond that. So to play for Great Britain now, you have to have eligibility by parents to be a UK citizen or apply for a UK passport. The only difference is in the Olympic Games, you have to physically hold that passport. In the World Baseball Classic, you have to be eligible to hold that passport. And you don't have to go through the physical process of obtaining one. Yeah. But in terms of our depth chart and the players that were on that, it was, we didn't have to go ringing round and knocking on their door and saying, do you want to play for Great Britain? That didn't happen this time.
Yeah, and so as you said, like you were qualified for this 2026 tournament, not having to search for players the same way was probably one of the elements. But how much difference has there been in this basically build up to this tournament? Because you've known for 3 years that you are going to participate in this tournament and not have to win a qualifier 6 months beforehand and then put all of your efforts through that and then have to put all of your efforts in the next 6 months to what you're actually going to do in the tournament.
Yeah, it was almost too long, I think. It's there's not many sports that 3 years out that you're qualified for. In other sports, there's usually a qualification event for everybody, or if you're the holder, you might get automatic entry. But you look at the FIFA World Cup in football. You only know a year out that you're definitely going. We knew 3 years out, and that was a lot of time to think about it. Okay, we didn't know where we were going, but we knew we were going somewhere, and it was, it was a luxury, but we also had to make sure that we still had that urgency. We didn't sit back and say, we've got 3 years for that. There was always going to be that urgency. But we created our own urgency by Drew being so successful and decided to work full time for the New York Yankees. So we created our own urgency there by then having to recruit in Brad Marcelino, who only had a year to prepare. So we created our own urgency there.
Yeah. But obviously in between, we've had the European Championships that have come up a couple of times. We've had the under-23s to go through that system as well. Did you have any kind of clear steps along the way from the performance in those tournaments that were leading towards kind of like how you wanted to perform like in the WBC?
Yeah, we knew that there were going to be investment triggers, and we had to highlight certain competitions to UK sport that we had to perform at in order to receive the amount of investment that we now do. And we targeted those events, and they were the under-23 Europeans, the under-23 World Cup qualification, and the senior Europeans. And up until the last senior Europeans, which were a little bit of an anomaly because we had targeted the world, but it wasn't a nominated competition for us. The World Baseball Classic was our nominated competition that's coming up. But the ones Europeans where we medalled at, it were the Europeans that we chose as our target events, our milestone events. We went to win the last Europeans. Don't get me wrong. We didn't think we didn't matter. We went to win, but we always had one eye on the Premier 12 and the World Baseball Classic. We knew fairly certain that we were going to be in the qualifier for the Premier 12. We knew that because we knew it was going to 16 teams, and we knew that it was quite likely we would be in that playoff bracket, to qualify for the Premier 12. So we said, right, the target is going to be the World Baseball Classic, and that's what we said that would be our milestone event. No one's saying that we're going to go to the World Baseball Classic and win it. I am a bit of a realist and know that that's highly unlikely. But what we can do is go there and try and go one better than last time. So at each stage of the process there, Russell, we've had a targeted event, a milestone event where we tested everything that we know that we've learned so far on this trajectory, and we're going to put all of that into play at the World Baseball Classic.
No, that's really interesting to hear.
Yeah.
Would you say
I hope
that then...
it makes sense? I hope it makes sense what I was trying to say there.
I think it does in part. I'd be interested to know if the European Championship just gone, it was a very youthful team that took part. Given the fact that maybe it wasn't one of your targeted events, which were, I think you, if I'm right, would say actually directly linked to like funding, were you using that event more as a preparing people for future events than necessarily kind of going out with the explicit aim of like putting like our best players on the field?
We fielded a strong team there. Yeah, we did underperform. We should have done better than what we did, and everybody knows that. We had a lot of things that were new at that event. It was Brad's first competition in charge, and we tried a few new things out. There were players that weren't available to us for whatever reason. But you ride with that. We know that. That's never an excuse not to win at something. And we went to the Europeans thinking that we were good enough still to be in the medal zone. And when I say medal zone, that's being the last four. Once you get to the semi-finals of any competition, anything can happen. So, I call it medal zone, and that's the last four of a competition. We didn't do that. One result could have changed that, and we didn't do it. But, we learned a hell of a lot from that competition. We learned a hell of a lot. And I think for Brad, it was a great learning process.
Yeah, that's interesting to see because obviously like you guys are now learning through the tournament. Brad's got to learn through how to kind of like to steer the ship as well. Do you feel that other nations in the tournament will treat you guys differently now that you're not necessarily like the happy-go-lucky minnow that's kind of made their way into the tournament?
Oh, absolutely. I was privileged to attend the MLB winter meetings with Brad this year, and we met the other nations that were competing. We met the head coaches, the performance directors, the sporting directors of the other nations. And the reception we got was very different to the reception that we got previously. I think people now know that with the roster that Great Britain have assembled, that we're going to be a match for people. It's they're going to have to watch us and scout us like we are scouting everybody else. It's I think there are still some sides that think it's a given when we play them. I think that that's natural. But there are teams within our group that I think that we can beat, and I think that there are others that we could shock. And that's what we intend to do.
Yeah, I still remember Trace Thompson's home run at the start of the game against the USA, which kind of quieted that stadium a little bit, as I don't think many of them were quite prepared for GB to even stand a chance in that game. So let's go a little bit more into the 2026 team. Obviously, like the rosters have been announced. It is a fairly complex process, which most of it has to be kept under lock and key. Is a bit of that directive from like the tournament, or is more of that actually you kind of don't want to know that your opposition know what your roster is because then they have more time to prepare?
Now it's all announced and everybody can see people's pen pictures and their names and all their stats. And your sport, I call it your sport, we're a baseball sport. I'm fascinated by the data that's the sport generates. It's it's driven by numbers and it's fantastic. I love reading it. I love learning about it. And the scouting process is something that fascinates me. Even at European Championship level, we scout. Our scouting network is tremendous, and I can sit for hours in those meetings and listen to what those scouts are saying. And when the game starts, I remember what they said. I'm looking for it to see if it's going to happen. But I think that the rosters are out there now. Everybody can see who's picked who. There's still one or two things that are still to be finalised with one or two players. So I think there's going to be some players in some nations that will drop out and there's going to be others come in. But people will see who's on show now. And I think that, that gets everybody excited. But it's one-off games, and scouting for a season, a league season, is very, very different than scouting for knockout international baseball.
Yeah.
Because it's one-off games, and you might only face that team once, and you might only face 1, 2, 3 pitchers. It's very difficult for anybody to scout anybody that accurately.
No, that's interesting to see. Obviously, the GB team are playing in Houston, playing in the US. I think it's fair to say that it allows you to have a stronger team than if you would potentially be playing in Japan. I think the MLB teams are more willing to kind of let their players during spring training come and perform there than go it out in Japan. Is that a correct assumption?
I think so. Yeah. We've only ever played in the US, so we can only go on what we experience. I was at the WBSC Congress last week, and I was speaking to the Czech guys there. And whilst they don't have many big leaguers playing for them, traveling to Tokyo, to Japan, is it's not as simple as some might think. They have restrictions on them as well, and I think that it does have benefits being in the US. Certain league teams would be more. Certainly, if I was an owner of a major league team, I'd be more inclined to let a player go and play up the road rather than halfway around the world. Because at least you can keep track of them and you know where they are. And should anything goes wrong, they're straight back to their home team. One thing I have noticed this time round as well is the confidence that major league organisations have with Great Britain. We have a very strong medical team. We draw medical staff from major league teams. And I think when you asked about the minnows being classed as minnows before, I think the organisations that release players to play in the World Baseball Classic view us differently now as well. They know that we're going to look after their players when they come to us. And I think that gives them reassurance as well. We're no longer that unknown. We've done it. We've shown that we can compete with the best. Our staff, the majority work in Major League, so that there's an air of confidence around releasing players to Great Britain. Certainly, that's the information I get given anyway. I've met a lot of owners now. I've met a lot of head coaches and managers, and they've all formed that relationship with me where they want to learn about what I've done in sport, and I want to learn what they do in baseball. They know I know very little about baseball, but they want to ask me about the other sports I've worked in. So I guess they're trying to get as much out of me as I'm trying to learn from them, because I'm like a sponge when it comes to baseball. I just want to learn everything. And if I get an opportunity to sit down with a manager and a head coach or an owner, they can't get rid of me because I'm asking all these questions and I'm noting it all down on my iPad about what they do. Because, trust me, if their ideas are good and work, I'm going to steal them.
No, 100%. I think any person would love to have that opportunity. So I think obviously the WBC are coming right now, but the big point in the future is LA 2028. I think you said right at the start, it was actually part of what was thrown at you with this baseball opportunity is the fact that there is this potentially 8-year plan to get into an Olympic cycle. Can you just talk through how sports and funding in the UK is almost can be at the elite level dependent on a sport being an Olympic sport compared to being a non-Olympic sport?
Yeah. One thing I will add, Russell, is they didn't tell me there was only going to be 6 teams at the Olympic Games when I took this job. Because, actually getting through to the Games is going to be a medal for a lot of teams. And when you get there, 50% of those teams are going to win a medal. What other sport have you got those odds? Once you get there, anything can happen. So I think anybody that gets to the Olympic Games has a chance of a medal. In order to receive investment from UK Sport, the government agency that funds sports in our country, you have to be an Olympic sport. There aren't many sports that receive any form of investment to the level that Olympic sports do. So the status of being an Olympic sport opens up so many investment opportunities from UK sport for the sports that are Olympic sports. The issue that baseball has and softball has is that we are not one of the core sports of the Olympic Games. Yeah, we can come and go. We are fingers crossed for Brisbane in 2032, and last week at the Congress, the noises were positive for inclusion in 2032. But until that is agreed and it's in writing and the local organising committee in Brisbane have said it, then no one's going to invest in us. But for us to receive the investment I think the sport deserves, it has to be an Olympic sport. It concerns me that we are not a core sport. I believe it should be. I think that there's a space for a sport like baseball in the Olympic Games, and but who knows what the local organising committee in Australia want? It's and then they have to manoeuvre that juggernaut of Major League Baseball to agree to allow the best players to play in it.
Yeah. So I think you spoke about it at the start, and I think it's a good place to kind of like end our conversation on, is the kind of like, what is the legacy and the future of this? As a player here in the UK, we have kind of we have a setup, we have some wonderful teams, some wonderful places around here, but it is a very kind of low level sport in the United Kingdom. But we do have all the opportunity to amazing players, thanks to some of this heritage. Also, the national team can compete at a higher level. How do we use this to build that legacy kind of at the local grassroots level?
I would like to see there be visibility of the sport at the highest level. There's no point us playing at the World Baseball Classic if there is no cascade of that down to grassroots. There's no point whatsoever. It's great that we're there, and it's great that we're competing with the top teams, but we need to make sure that people see that. And so it's the visibility of that. And we've already started to see it with the emerging players program that BSUK and the BBF have put together. When I came in, there was an academy structure, but I didn't like the word academy. It had all sorts of connotations of football academies, and that was hijacked by various places that run academies, and everybody calls their program an academy, and it lost its meaning for me. So I would love the World Baseball Classic and its legacy of that to be to fund a emerging players pathway, so that anybody that picks up a bat or a ball in Great Britain can see a pathway through to the national team. Right? We all know that if a player is good enough to do that, the likelihood is they're going to have to go and play abroad, because that's where the professional leagues are. Because if we're going to be a competitive team, win medals at European Championships, we're going to be up against professional players, and our players have got to be playing professionally. We've got to be playing day in, day out. And whilst there's no professional leagues in the UK, which I think is another huge opportunity, why can't there be a professional league in the UK? Why can't we attract talent from other countries to play in a professional league in the UK? All it needs is some really good entrepreneurial brains to put that together, because I think that there would be interest in that. But I would love there to be a legacy of a pathway that a young player could carve himself out a career in professional baseball coming from one of these fields we've got dotted around our country.
Yeah, that's amazing to see. And we've already had the first few sessions of those this year with that emerging program. I've seen a few down in Greenwich and across the country. So it'll be amazing to see how those continue on. My final question for you, Gary, is kind of like the final pitch. We are sitting here in 2030. What does success look like? Is it a medal at the Olympics, or is it more a change in how the British public perceives baseball? Or why not both?
I was going to say that's an easy answer. Because I just say to you both of those, Russell, that'd be brilliant if we could do that. I think that, let's be brutally honest here. Yeah, the journey we've been on, the trajectory we've had over the last 4 years is fantastic, for what we've achieved. We are ahead of the plan that I laid out. I have a blueprint on my office wall, and we are ahead of this curve. I didn't think we would be where we are. and I never go on world rankings because the WBSC world ranking methodology is so convoluted and so confusing, right? It's untrue. And yeah, and we will be gauged on one-off tournaments because you look at that world ranking and we don't host events for a start in this country. So therefore we're penalized straight away because we have to qualify for everything. Other countries host events and they don't have to qualify because they're the host nation. So they automatically get big points. We don't. So that I disregard the methodology for that ranking straight away. So I don't think it's right. So I would like to see that our world standing in major competitions is that we're regularly medal zone. In European Championships, we're regularly medal zone and we qualify for the bigger platforms. That's what I would like to see happen. In addition to that, I would like to see more opportunities for people to play baseball in the country and for people to be able to pick up they don't pick up newspapers these days, and they go online these days and read about their national teams and also read about their local teams. I used to live in Hemel Hempstead and I used to see this baseball ground in Grove Hill when I was walking my dogs. And I didn't know who played there or anything. Now I follow their results, and I'd like everybody in the general public to know that they have a local ballpark, they have a local team, and maybe the visibility. Yeah, we were joking last week saying that, with you watch breakfast TV at the moment and you see the medalists from Milan Cortina coming on there talking about sports that are much smaller than baseball. Okay, and everybody wants to be now the next skeleton rider or the next acrobat skier or the big hill or whatever they want to be. I would love to be on breakfast TV talking about Great Britain beating USA. Wouldn't that be a fantastic story, right? It would be an upset amongst all upsets, and as I say, I'm a realist. But wouldn't it be good if we could suddenly see the visibility of Great Britain baseball on a breakfast TV or on Radio 5 live drive time? But because we've achieved some good results at the World Baseball Classic, and there's no reason we can't. There is no reason we can't. And I would hope if in 2030, when I probably have retired by then, Russell, we're talking now, and you invite me back on as a guest, and whatever sport I'm working with then lets me come and talk to you, and you tell me, isn't it great that we've got this professional league and we've got all these young players coming through, and 4 or 5 British-born players are making their debut in the major league this year. That would be fantastic.
Now, that is a dream and a place I think we all want to get to within the British world. Those of us who play on this side, those of us who just enjoy watching baseball as a whole. Gary, thank you so much for your time. It's always a pleasure.
Thank you.
Your insights are always very interesting to have. So thank you very much. Thank you all for listening. You can find us at batflips_nerds on Twitter and batflips and nerds on other social devices and batflipsandnerds.com. We'll have another episode devoted to actually going through the roster of the GB team soon. But until then, thank you, and we'll hope you listen soon.